Is all of our technology working tonight?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. They're ready whenever.
Okay. So I'm going to call the Town Council meeting for August 18th to order and ask for a roll call.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Rennie.
Here.
Councilmember Syak.
Here.
Vice Mayor Spector.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Jensen.
Here. We will begin with manager and council matters. This is an opportunity for members of the council to report on those things that they have done on behalf of the town of general interest to this public and to other members of the council. Then we'll follow with any report that Laurel Pavetti, our town manager, wants to share. So Councilman Rennie.
Okay, on 8/12, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority board met and the board approved an updated integrated resource plan. The IRP is a document required of all load serving entities by the California PUC. The purpose of the IRP process is to ensure that the electricity sector is on track to achieve its portion of the required statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. The IRP shows that Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority can continue its goals of providing clean energy while maintaining cost competitive rates and furthering system reliability. As you know, we're having a little system reliability issues with all the heat right now. We also, Silicon Valley Clean Energy also did updates to in its strategic plan, does updates in its strategic plan each year, and we worked on this. This plan helps direct Silicon Valley Clean Energy in its mission to bend the carbon curve. With input from the director, staff, and stakeholders, the strategic plan will help adopt Silicon Valley Clean Energy operations and outputs to address the changing times. We also looked at our 2021 proposed operating budget. The proposed budget is balanced and presents Silicon Valley Clean Energy in stable financial condition. The projected balance available to contribute to reserves is $8.4 million, and Silicon Valley Clean Energy continues to stay in the black in spite of challenges related to COVID and increased costs from PG&E. Overall, the budget is responsive to the forecast of an extended recessionary period with a shelter in place and resulting decrease in commercial and industrial load during the latter half of this year. Of total expenses, 91% is dedicated to power and 9% is allocated to customer programs and administrative costs. I also attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Finance Committee on 8/5, and I did a portfolio management training also with Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority on 8/17. On 8/6, the VTA Governance and Audit Committee met and the board met. The board approved the 1.8 sales tax for Caltrain to be put on the ballot. And we passed resolutions of necessity for property needed for the East Ridge light rail extension and electrification of Caltrain. On 8/10, the Los Gatos Town Council Finance Committee met, and on 8/12, the Conceptual Design Advisory Committee met, and the one item on that was the moving of a home with historic and cultural significance from the North 40 Phase 2 area into Phase 1 area. That's it for my report.
Thank you, Councilman Rennie. Councilwoman Syak.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we last met, there were 3 meetings of the Cities Association Executive Board. With the Select Committee, we chose, this is an opportunity to choose our representative on ABAG's Executive Board, and we chose to continue Liz Gibbons of Campbell as well as Chris Clark from Mountain View. For our legislative action, we took a look at all the different bills that are in circulation, and we reinforced the housing principles for all of the existing housing bills. And then for the executive board, we agreed as a cities association to endorse the Cut the Commute pledge. And I believe that will be coming to each city. And it's really an opportunity for local governments and agencies to see how they can continue the telecommuting practices that began during COVID so that we can reduce emissions and hopefully alleviate some of the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Syak. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our last council meeting, I've attended the following: a meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee, the Policy Committee, the Finance Committee, the West Valley Sanitation District Board meeting, Silvar, which is the Silicon Valley Realtors, and participated in, I think, 1 or 2 county COVID calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Since our last meeting, I've also participated in the General Plan Advisory Committee meeting and also the Policy Committee, where the members of the committee could not agree on changes to the hillside standards. And so that matter will be moving without a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Also had multiple calls, multiple Zoom meetings, etc., and nothing further to report. So Ms. Pravetti?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I just have 2 quick items for you. The town continues to try and support our local businesses as they try and recover from the COVID pandemic. Most recently, the town has opened its park reservation process to allow businesses to reserve dedicated spaces within certain parks. There's more information on the Parks and Public Works website. In addition, the library unfortunately has no air conditioning. So for the last few days, we've been closing early. So we are advising patrons to please call first before coming to town to pick up your curbside pickup. That phone number is 408-354-6891. We do offer live chat hours as well as live phone hours from 11 till 5, and that phone number is also available to assist patrons. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. Just a little primer on how we're going to proceed tonight. For those of you who may not have joined us before, if you would like to speak on any of the calendar items that I'm going to be announcing, you need to go down to your little participant button on the Zoom, and it gives you an opportunity to raise an electronic hand. So if you click on that, I will see your hand and call on you. For whatever matter you are going to be presenting on, you have 3 minutes. The council may have questions for you, so wait to see whether that's going to happen before you click off on your mute. When you are called on, just unmute yourself, and we will, you can just start talking when you think that you've got that done, and we'll give you some kind of sign if we're not hearing you. Otherwise, just go ahead and start talking. Our calendar is divided into certain sections. Tonight we have the consent calendar. Those are items where they're generally not controversial. They represent actions that might have already been taken, information that needs to be given to the council, or, for example, approval of contracts that have already been completed for tonight. So with the consent calendar, the council can take an action on those in a single motion, but anyone can pull an item from consent if they want to discuss it further. And I'll call for that when we get to that portion. After that, we're going to have verbal communications, which is a time that anyone can talk to us about something that is not on our agenda tonight. And the only substantive thing we have on our agenda tonight is consideration of an ordinance to regulate drones in town, which we actually heard at our last meeting, and there's some modifications that have been made to it for our consideration tonight. And when we get, and for verbal communications, you get 3 minutes, you get 1 chance to speak. On public hearings, we have 1 on the drone ordinance, 3 minutes to speak. There may be questions. When everyone is done speaking, then we'll close the public hearing. There won't be a second opportunity to speak, and the council will debate it. So hopefully I've given you some ground rules that we can go forward with. So we're going to start now with the consent calendar. Does any member of the council wish to pull an item from consent? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to look for hands of participants. Does anyone in our audience this evening want to pull an item from the consent calendar? And as always, throughout tonight, I'm just going to give it a couple seconds to make sure I don't miss anyone who's trying to get their hand up. I do not see anyone, so I'm now going to look to the council for a motion on our consent calendar. Councilwoman Sayoc.
I move to approve items on consent 1 through 8. So,
is there a second?
Second, Councilmember Rennie.
Seconded by Councilmember Rennie. As with everything while we're doing Zoom meetings, we are taking roll call votes so that we can make sure our votes are recorded correctly. So roll call vote, Councilwoman Sayoc,
Yes.
Councilman Rennie,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spector,
Yes.
and the mayor votes yes, so our consent calendar passes unanimously. After the consent calendar is the time in our agenda for verbal communications, which I explained, an opportunity to speak on anything for 3 minutes that is not on the agenda tonight. On these matters, we don't have a debate because it's not been agendized to the public. Public doesn't know about it. So you make a presentation, it may get on a future calendar, but we will not take an action or have a debate on it tonight. We will just listen to the information you provide and perhaps maybe have a question for you. So is there anyone who wants to talk to us tonight about something that is not on our calendar? And I'm going to wait for hands to go up. I see one, but I'm just going to give it a second. Okay, I'm going to start in, and I apologize to everyone that I'm going to be calling on, because if you have named yourself something that's not an obvious name, I just read that, and so I'm going to have to call you by whatever I see on my screen. So the first person I see is Murphy.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Murphy Rowan, and I am the owner of the dance studio Dance Attack. I've only been the owner for 2 years, but Dance Attack is a legacy business in Los Gatos, having been a member of the community and neighborhood for over 20 years. We serve over 250 families annually, providing dance training, physical fitness, artistic enrichment, and social and emotional growth for students ages 2.5 to adult. Our physical location has been closed since March 16th, and although we pivoted to a virtual studio throughout April, May, and June, our in-person classes are what our families most desire. We were told by the state of California and the county of Santa Clara that we should provide outdoor services, but at this time, the landlord of Walgreens Center, which is Blossom Hill Investment Company, has not allowed outdoor services, and only 3 hours ago, I finally received notice that they would only consider my request for outdoor classes to begin fall classes for these families. However, I'm also finding that I need the help of the town of Los Gatos in another way. I have also been hoping to open additional classroom next door to my main unit for when in-person classes are allowed, and my name is already on the lease. However, I have now been waiting 16 months to be allowed to begin putting in the floor and my equipment due to a series of delays from the Community Development Department. I was told that I had too many students for the parking permit, even though I showed them that I did not and we were within the correct range. I was told by the planning technician that a new certificate of use and occupancy would be required for the establishment of a new business in a new location, even though the new room is directly next to my room. We had more problems after this. Completing the new larger room will be essential to my business because it will allow a safe room for training while providing the social and physical distancing that this type of class requires. And I'm here today to ask for help and guidance in finishing this extra room so that we can offer the safest classes to our faithful customers. We cannot move in until the owner's construction company finishes the sprinklers in the bathroom, but the permit has encountered roadblocks over and over and still seems to have issues. Again, we've been waiting 16 months to be able to use this room. Dance Attack is an anchor for the Walgreens Center, bringing in customers for Walgreens, Starbucks, Subway, Mountain Mike's, Creative Escape, Tea Garden Chinese Food, 3 hair and nail salons, Foxy Hound Pet Grooming, and KC Healthcare. Everyone in the center is hoping that we can reopen because they can tell when Dance Attack classes are in session by the increase in foot traffic that my dance families bring to all of their businesses. It is so important that we be able to open when the county allows it, and the use of this new room is crucial to the success in our new normal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. Jeffrey Suzuki.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
All right. Hello, this is Jeff. I am a founder and coordinator of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. First, I want to outline what most people in this room recognize as a social, economic, and political failure in the past few decades. which is our inability to provide affordable housing. So oftentimes we'll hear the same range of talking points as you have all personally dealt with. Not in my backyard advocates are typically going to cycle through the same range of points. They'll always say that traffic will explode and that it will undermine the character of this town if we build anything above double-digit housing units. However, as all of you at this call understand, these complaints will be cycled through regardless of the viability or contributions of that housing project. And nobody will ever say it out loud that they are opposed to affordable housing, since that's socially inappropriate. Anything constituting double digits in units has been strongly opposed, to the point where the project morphs into something that is unrecognizable. It manifests itself in the 4 units of teacher housing when the original proposal was 32 units. It was the Ditto's Lane project, from what I've heard, was kind of a catastrophe. The amount of political opposition here is massive, and I acknowledge that. Because I have only 3 minutes, I ask all of you as town council members, government officials, to seriously discuss the prevalent socioeconomic segregation that persists in Los Gatos. And what I'm asking you is to conjure the courage to place these items as part of the agenda, and to acknowledge that the status quo is not even close to being sufficient. The best time to seriously discuss police and socioeconomic segregation and other racial issues was 4 months ago. The second best time is now. I understand that there are a lot of logistical considerations. These utilities are complicated to tamper with and restructure, but acknowledging that there is a comical level of socioeconomic segregation here, and taking a serious effort to combat in public, is what I'm asking here. A good faith demonstration of this serious effort is not to tell us that you're happy to listen to us. The good faith demonstration is placing that item on the agenda, or as an official declaration of intent in public. As a last note, there's a 2-ton elephant in the room when it comes to dealing with racism. And it typically isn't police brutality or something extremely violent. It's that there are very few Black people here. There were 6 Black students at LGHS last year with a class size of over 2,000. This cannot be solved with a gradualist, let's build a couple of houses here and there. We do actually need an ambitious plan relatively soon, but first we cannot solve this problem unless we acknowledge the problem, whether it's in a part of our general plan, pledges and otherwise. Realistically, the only thing that can ameliorate this crisis is affordable housing targeted towards lower income minorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good timing. Any questions for Mr. Suzuki? Thank you. Kevin Asher.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kevin Asher. I live in 90 Reservoir, and I'm calling regarding the proposed development at 200 Prospect. In the 10 years we've lived in our home, that property's been sparingly used, and mostly by retired nuns. And we're very concerned about the infrastructure that would be in place to support the property as we've been hearing about its intended use, particularly with the fire risk. That property backs up to many greenlands, and in looking at the property, it's very concerning to see how the fire department would be able to access those facilities should a problem arise, and whether the property meets the current coding standards in terms of either fire, electrical, or plumbing. So our request is that the town eliminate any further work at that site until these matters can be fully investigated and better understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asher. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none. Kinsey Lee.
Name's Kinsey. I would just like to second Jeffrey Suzuki's 2 claims. The first regarding more densely, or adding affordable housing to the agenda in any one of these commission meetings or town council meetings. Moreover, discussion of police reform. Currently there's 37% of the town council budget appears to be allocated to the police. And we would just like discussions on the table regarding independent police oversight and reallocation of some funds to potentially nonviolent and de-escalating personnel as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Lee. Seeing none. Oh, Councilman Rennie, you have a question.
It's really more for staff. May come up a couple more times, and the question is: are we going to discuss affordable housing during our general plan update, which should be coming when, in the next couple of months?
So the General Plan Advisory Committee has been talking about various ways to increase density within Los Gatos. And as part of that, affordable housing is definitely part of this. We will be considering the land use element. I don't know exactly the timing. Director Paulson may know, but I believe it will be later on this fall. So that's going to be the next best opportunity for those interested speakers to talk about affordable housing with the town. We don't have any pending affordable housing projects that we see coming to the town council, so there won't be project-based projects. However, the Planning Commission did consider modifications to our below market price program in terms of guidelines and ordinance changes, and that will be scheduled most likely in September. So again, that's a wonderful opportunity for those speakers interested in how we can improve and strengthen our below market price program, which has actually proved quite successful in creating permanent deed restricting housing in Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you for that thorough answer.
Thank you, Ms. Reddy. Any other questions? Hey, no doubt going to mispronounce this, so I apologize. Jim Sminge.
Hi, just that's close. Thank you very much. My name is Jim Smingy, and I was out for an evening walk during the last city council meeting when the discussion was around the Sisters or the Prospect Avenue housing unit that I think was just mentioned in a previous caller. And we just happened to be right near it when you were talking about it last week, and we were listening on our phones. And so it struck me that we have a very similar housing unit at the end of our street, which is Central Avenue. Central Avenue is basically one hill over from where that Sisters, Reservoir Road, Prospect Avenue area is. And that at 42 Central, we have something that's historically called the Florentine Village. It's an old boarding house and restaurant that's at the end of Central Avenue that has small rentable units, I think 10 or 11 small units where typically single people would rent at a lower cost than you'd see in typical housing here in Los Gatos. And so the comparison struck me that we've had that here for decades, and you know, it's added to the diversity of the neighborhood, hasn't caused any traffic problems. You know, a lot of the concerns that I was hearing from the neighbors of this new construction might be allayed if they were to come by and take a look at the unit that we have at the end of our street here that I think is quite similar in density and the type of housing that they're looking at constructing over there. So we already have an example. Come and take a look and see what you think, and it might help some of the people allay their concerns. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Smingy, thank you very much for that information. Any questions for the speaker? I don't see anyone. And now I've got, this is always a challenge, Parag Thakori.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I have been a resident of Los Gatos for the last 10 years. I live at 88 Prospect Avenue, Los Gatos. And I am highly concerned about development at 200 Prospect Avenue, and primarily for two reasons. One is obviously it impacts the value of the homes by bringing in multiple renters. But more importantly, there is also a private street. So if you see right before my home at 88 Prospect, the town street ends and a private street begins. And the Sisters were given kind of access to that private street, and primarily because of the limited traffic. So it was like less foot traffic on that private street. And this is between 88 and the neighbors, I believe 85, like that whole street is a private street. So if the amount of traffic is going to be what it is, then it's going to be really hard to accommodate. And we wanted to bring this to attention on the city as well. So that street that is to access the 200 Prospect Avenue doesn't belong to the city from what we understand. So would really appreciate if the city can look into this. We are highly concerned about the number of people that would turn up there. And we request the town to further investigate this particular, the 200 Prospect development.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. So we'll move to our next speaker, who is Jeff Frederickson.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Jeff Frederickson. I want to thank you all for the amazing work you have done through the COVID crisis. I know that's been a challenge for everybody. I am Parag's neighbor at 85 Prospect Avenue. I'm also calling in regards to 200 Prospect Avenue, Sisters of the Holy Court. Again, we have grave concerns over the stress of the very, very small private drive that does lead to the multiple housing units at the end of Prospect Avenue. What we were asking is just for the city to further investigate not just the small private drive and private zoning issues of our shared street, but to also look at the multiple housing units that they propose to have. The street was never proposed to be a month-to-month rental unit. It was a small family neighborhood for the Traveling Sisters of the Holy Court. So I would just really appreciate the opportunity for you guys to further look into the issue. And thank you again for all the work you guys have done in 2020. I know it's been a hard year for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Frederickson. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any. Bill Kraus. And for those of you who are joining us tonight, Mr. Kraus is the last hand that I have up. So if you want to talk, put your hand up. So Mr.
Hi,
Kraus?
I'm calling also about 200 Prospect. The 6 Catholic nuns, give or take, were living there for quite some time, and it was a quiet use. Now the 14 separate families or residences are proposed or forecast for the property. And this is way too intensive for the neighborhood. Not only the traffic on that small road, and I'm familiar with Central that the prior caller called about. Central has quite a bit better access than this road does. Also, we're not only asking the town to look into the current rules and regs and assure that they are complied with, but also review the use. I ask you, think about yourselves. How would you like to have 6 nice nuns living next to you? And then next use is 14 new families coming into the same property. I think you'd be aghast. I think you'd say to yourself, how does this happen? And yes, it may be compliant with the current rules and regs. And if so, then they're not proper. We need better regulation. So I think what we're all asking is that not that something be taken away from someone, but that the property owner, but that the neighborhood not have things taken away from it, not have our safety taken away from us from walking on the streets, not have our children not be allowed to play on the streets. So I ask you to step into our shoes and think about what you'd think about having 14 new families moving into the house next door to you. I think if there aren't rules and regs that would either prohibit this or well regulate it, then there should be. And we ask you to step up to the plate and take care of this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? I don't see any. Catherine Summers?
Good evening, Council. I actually have 3 points tonight. A couple I'm bringing up as the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and then the last one is as a resident up in the Prospect neighborhood. So the first one, I wanted to give a shout out to Murphy of Dance Attack. I've been over there a couple of times and have talked to a few of the businesses that are in that same complex. And she really is an anchor business over there. And I really hope that the the permitting process, building permits, whatever that you all do, that we can kind of make sure that she is up and running day one when the shelter in place is over, because it's really important to these small businesses that we do whatever we can for them. So there's no one to blame. I just think that we really need to make sure, and I've had other calls from people saying the same thing about the building department. I just really want to make sure that we give everybody a fighting chance. I love that you opened the parks to a lot of these gyms and other people who need outdoor space. I think that's going to be a big help. So I really appreciate that. Second, I did want to say I am very much in favor of affordable housing, and workforce housing is another word for it. I don't know if we have spent enough time on talking about affordable housing and what that really means for Los Gatos. I think people are really scared about what that means. And I think there's a lot more education that needs to be done on that front. Third, again, as a resident, and of course, I was just talking about affordable housing. I'm not really sure that 200 Prospect is going to be necessarily affordable housing. But what I do know from living up here is that I think we have to do a safety study, or we should do a safety study on the road right there, Prospect, where it hits Reservoir. I mean, even my own children have been in accidents. One of them, in fact, was in an accident with one of the nuns. And there aren't any median lines, and there aren't any crosswalks or stop signs, or anything to really make that area safe. So I think if it's done right, the neighborhood will be fine, but I think there just needs to be a little more oversight on what's going on here. And that's all. Thanks, Council.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Any questions? I don't see any. I'm going to give it a couple seconds to see if anybody else wants to put their hand up. Okay, I don't see anyone, so I'm going to move on to the only public hearing that we have for this evening, which is item number 9, which is a second look at an ordinance regulating drones in Los Gatos. So Ms. Lampros.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. You're correct. This was on for a first reading 2 weeks ago and is back for a second first reading thanks to your insightful comments and concerns. And I think it's been revised and improved. I am happy, of course, to address anything in the prior staff report that is attached to this staff report tonight. If there are any questions as to the bulk of the ordinance again, but I'll comment right now. I'll limit my comments to the questions that council proposed last session. The first was with regard to first-person view goggles or any kind of goggle assist, viewing assist prohibition that had been in the ordinance. And I consulted with drone racing experts and tried to write something that carved out that exception for drone racing. So it's contemplated to be allowed with the consent of the private property on which the drone races are held. And in fact, we did receive an email on August 18. I think it was too late to get in, I'm not sure, as an addendum. But it was from the Santa Cruz Multi-GP branch of the International Multi-GP Drone Racing League. And they were very enthusiastic about the ordinance and urged its passage and wanted to work with the town and parks and schools and all that to find places to hold races. So that was a vote of confidence. And then the second area of questioning from council was with regard to the prohibition of drones at accident scenes and law enforcement incidents. And that was, of course, designed initially to balance privacy rights of victims with the need for law enforcement to be distraction-free and interference-free. But the FAA has very strict rules against not interfering with law enforcement. And there is a prohibition in both the FAA and our ordinance against flying over people. So on balance, those things should preclude somebody from using a drone over the scene. We felt that with police officers on the ground, they could make their subjective determination at the time if drones in the vicinity were interfering. So we removed a specific footage prohibition of which to stay away from a scene of a crime or an accident. And I will say that the drone community seems to really understand that need and respect it from the research I've done. So it simply just goes back to don't interfere, don't fly over. And there are immunities given in certain life-saving situations, rendering health and safety for law enforcement if they do damage a drone. So I think that the tweak there is appropriate and will allow for as much transparency and news coverage as possible, balanced against the need for the victims' rights and the law enforcement. And then with regard to the standard of harassing, stalking, annoying, I put in language. I think all of our ordinances are interpreted in a reasonable person standard, but it's always a good idea to call things out explicitly. And so hopefully the tweaks done to that section of the ordinance make it clearly that it can't just be sort of a thin-skinned plaintiff kind of claim, but that the harassing conduct has to be reasonable and to a person of ordinary sensibilities. And I know anecdotally that our town attorney was at a neighborhood meeting recently, and this ordinance was mentioned, and there was a lady very happy that this ordinance was on the table because she had felt that there was a drone in her neighborhood that was stalking and viewing through her windows. So hopefully we have covered all the bases of your concerns. And again, I'm happy to speak to them or anything else that was in the body of the ordinance from last week. I also made some little tweaks and changes upon my research with the FAA attorney that I think improved it overall as well. So you'll see some changes throughout beyond what you had drawn our attention to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lampros. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Rennie.
Thank you, Ms. Lampros, this for all the improvements on this. I can't recall if we talked about it last time, but I understand, and maybe it's a two-part question, that some people need an FAA license to fly drones. Does everybody need an FAA license to fly a drone? And in the process of getting an FAA license, I would assume they have to take a test, which requires them to know what the federal and state laws are, and maybe even the local laws.
Yes, they do have to be FAA certified, and there is a comprehensive test. There are only 3 state laws applicable, but they have to know federal and state law, and the federal laws are pretty torturous.
So if those laws are not relisted in ours, that in the process of getting their FAA license, they will know about those laws.
Yes, and the very first provision of 18.90.030 regulations is that no person shall operate any UAS in a manner prohibited by federal statute or regulation or state statute or regulation. So that's the umbrella catch-all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question. Ms. Lampros, thank you very much. I know these were largely my concerns that I raised last time, and I think that what you did and your research, I really appreciate, because I think that we have an approved project, and ordinance. So thank you very much. My only lingering question is, on page 3 of 6, it has to do again with the drone racing, my little obsession.
Okay.
Paragraph 3 really refers to use of the goggles. And it says the section shall not apply to the use of first-person goggles during authorized drone races on private property. Okay, fine. But then you go to the section on schools, where it contemplates that you can use a drone on school property as long as you've given notice and prior permission. So I think that I can race drones on a school, but this paragraph 3 implies that I can only do that on private property. So I'm just worried that there's a conflict. And if there's not a conflict, can you tell me why there's not a conflict?
I also contemplated schools for drone racing. So I think I was trying to draw the contrast simply between public property versus other.
So could the ordinance potentially be fixed, if you will, by just looking at paragraph 3 and saying this section shall not apply to the use of first-person goggles during authorized drone races with the consent of the property owner, without calling out what kind of property it is? Just strike that phrase, on private property.
And I think that that's probably a minor enough amendment that it wouldn't necessitate another first reading. But I think that yeah, if it otherwise precludes schools, then we should change that.
Okay. And I apologize, I can't find the school section right now.
Well, there was
B.
this, I hope you weren't speaking of section 13, because that is the school section, but it's, that's actually.
It was no, yeah. Yes, it is 13. No person shall take off land or operate a model USS for within 200 feet of a school facility while in session without prior notification. But if there is prior notification permission from the school, I don't see why you couldn't race while the school isn't in session, which is why I was concerned that we were limiting it, at least seem to be limiting it to private property. So that's why I'm suggesting to striking that phrase in paragraph 3.
Right. Consent would obviate 13, and that was really contemplated more for photographing students improperly. So authorized drone racing wouldn't apply, and I think we can make that change to 3 without impact.
Okay, thank you. Other questions before I open it to the public? Seeing none, I have one hand up, Kyle Buell. And just start talking.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Council. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Kyle Buell. I also am a drone racing chapter organizer. I host 415 FPV. We're based out of Alameda, but we basically have like upwards of 300 pilots from Humboldt all the way down to Ventura County. So when I saw, I think it was a Zoom meeting on Facebook that had you, Mayor, recognizing the difference between FPV drone racing and cinematography, what you could buy at Best Buy. I practically fell out of my chair, and so I basically just wanted to offer any insight. I don't have like a 3-minute opening statement prepared. I just kind of hopped in, and I just wanted to basically offer, my input, any questions. I saw that there's talk of private property in schools. I like the addition of schools. Younger pilots are very committed. They tend to dive in very deep and they get involved. So by including schools, I think we include school kids, and we get more school kids in our chapter in STEM. And I think that's a really, really good direction to go. But yeah, other than that, I just wanted to, I guess, show my appreciation, show my enthusiasm, and offer any insight. And that's pretty much all I had prepared. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you for talking to us tonight. Any questions for the speaker from the council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Buell. Anyone else? I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. Again, give it a couple seconds. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and look to the council for any additional questions that you might have, a discussion and or a motion. Councilwoman Sayoc.
I guess I want to echo what the speaker said and thank both you and Ms. Lampros, because I learned so much about drones the past 2 meetings. So I'm happy with the changes, and I agree with Ms. Lampros. The striking out private property seems to be small enough where we could go ahead with first reading. So I introduced by title only the ordinance of the town of Los Gatos, amending Chapter 18 by adding Article 9, Section 18.90.010 to 18.90.050 of the Town Code entitled Drones and Unmanned Aircraft Systems.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Rennie. Any discussion before I call the question? Seeing none, I am going to do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Sayoc?
Yes.
Councilman Rennie?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spector?
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes, with appreciation, Ms. Lampros, for the changes, and to you drone racers out there for educating us. So it passes unanimously. And Ms. Neese, will you read the title, please?
An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos amending Chapter 18 of the Los Gatos Town Code by adding Article 9, Sections 18.90.010 through 18.90.050 entitled Drones and Unmanned Aircraft Systems.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neese. And it's now 7:45 and we have nothing left. So if I see nothing further, I am going to thank you all for attending tonight. Tell you all to go jump in a bath of ice water, Mr. Red, and say goodnight and hope that it cools down at some point. Good night, everyone.